up, Job Squad? Welcome to episode 4? 4. We watched the CM Punk documentary, Best in the World, on the WWE Network, and now today we're going to discuss it. I am Intel. This is
Collin.
Collin. What's up, C-Man? How's it going? How's
Pretty
life
good.
been treating you? You been doing all right?
Hanging in there.
Do anything interesting? You watch any wrestling?
Yeah, I've been super busy.
Yeah, well, it figures. Everybody's super busy, but I make time. I make time for the wrestling. I'm just kidding. You don't have to watch wrestling. Just watch what I tell you to watch, and that's good.
Okay.
So we watched the CM Punk documentary, guys. But before we get into that, I've been doing this a lot in all of my videos. Leave a comment. Hey, let's start a discussion and talk some wrestling and whatnot. Collin will probably comment back if he sees that he's mentioned. Otherwise, he doesn't give a shit. He only cares about himself,
That's
and that
not
is
true.
it. He is self-centered, selfish son of a bitch.
No, someone said hi to me and I said hi back. So
Yeah, well,
if
you
you're
didn't-
out there, if you're watching.
You should probably go. You should probably go back and comment on like episode 3.
Okay.
I think you missed some comments there
Oh,
about
alright.
you.
Oh,
Yeah, I forgot to tell you about him. But all right, so we watched the CM Punk doc. What'd you think overall of the documentary before we get into your questions?
I liked how the documentary was set up. Like, it flowed really well. He started from the beginning and ended at the end, obviously. But the way that they did that, the way they took it through his career and broke it up into different, shouldn't say sections of his life, but I guess you could say eras.
Yeah.
And within each era, he talked about the things that were good and bad in each of those eras. And I mean, he even was doing stuff with, like, they talked about his diet and part of it. Like, they were just doing like little cool information and make it more intimate, so you really got to know CM Punk.
What I liked most is that they would do like, they started off with like early childhood and growing up and that kind of stuff, and then they would go into like why he likes to run or exercise, and then they'd go into his independent career, and then they would go back to something, his diet or whatever, and they would break it up like that, where it was like they would talk about something and then they would go to something like modern day that he does.
Yeah, it was kind of erratic, but the way that they laid it out made it run very smoothly.
Yeah. Actually, I believe that the documentary was kind of set up by him. Like, I believe he picked like all the music and he gave like the okay on everything that was done, and so like the whole layout was kind of his mindset or something. But yeah, so it was overall, I think it was good. I've seen it before. He's never seen it, but I loved it the first time I watched it, and it kind of it's kind of fun to go back and revisit every once in a while. But so what kind of questions you got? I've got so many notes that I was just going to go through and just talk about each part, but if we did that, we're going to end up being here for 3-4 hours. So we're just going to answer Collin's questions and then maybe talk about a few things that I have.
I'm just looking at your front page now, and I have Steel Domain, trained by Ace Steel. And you got that right there.
Yeah.
Who's Ace Steel?
I have no clue.
Oh.
So
Well,
he's a trainer.
he's
So
a
that's the guy that trained him.
okay.
There were 2 guys, but I forgot the other guy. But Colt Cabana that you met.
Right, I met Cole.
He also trained there, but they mentioned that in the documentary.
They
So
did.
they trained at the same place. That's where they got to know each other. Then they would go on to have big matches around the world. And they mentioned Detroit multiple times in the thing, which was cool because we're from Detroit. Don't fuck with us.
He doesn't represent Detroit very much, but I do.
Anyways, but yeah. So then, like, they talk about that, how like they would travel from place to place, which is kind of a thing that happens in the indies from time to time, where like a certain matchup is like the headline, and then they headline different places. And then CM Punk had it again with Chris Hero later on, and then they all ended up in ROH.
Mm-hmm.
So next question. Didn't know that one.
IWA.
Right, IWA.
That is, what is that? Like, I get what it is, but like, is it?
It's like I don't think it's
Is
around
it an
anymore.
org in itself, or
Yeah. It's like an independent company run by Axel Rotten. He used to be in ECW or something like that. I think
Okay.
that's who it is. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me. But from what I understand, is it was like a hardcore style federation that's for independents.
just
all,
people trying to make their mark and get?
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Yeah, and it
Okay.
was like that's just basically where CM Punk and Colt Cabana and I believe Chris Hero all
Got their start.
got their start and kind of made a name for themselves. And I think CM Punk talks about it a little bit, where he says like it was a hardcore federation, so like a lot of people were doing death matches and doing insane stuff
Yeah.
and beating the shit out of each other and using weapons. And then like him and Colt and Chris Hero and somebody else were like the wrestlers. They were the guys that went out and did technical shit like suplexes and submissions and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where he really got his start. Next question.
I'm trying to do this in
Chronological order.
Yeah, chronological order, but that's not how I take notes. I'm just kind of everywhere.
How do you watch a documentary and then not take notes in order? Like, were you thinking about?
Well, I just started writing on different places on my paper.
Oh, okay.
Like
Yeah,
even, you can see even
I see
something
that.
going.
Yeah,
okay,
I see
yeah.
that. I'll just take a drink while you figure out what the fuck's next.
I guess when they were talking about at the very beginning his relationship with his family, I don't really have a question about it, but I thought I'd like to make a comment then on the whole straight edge thing and how he used his life experiences to try and better other people's. Makes, in my mind, makes him one of the good guys. All around, is a good person.
Right.
He stands for something and he believes in it. And obviously, he kind of blew it out of proportion, but that was more theatrical or for the show. He obviously wouldn't go up to someone drinking a beer just on the street randomly and just smack the shit out of their, like, you know. But that was cool. I like that.
The part about that is like, I think that's one of the reasons why I really liked CM Punk.
And that was another thing that I was running through my head when I first saw that. I'm like, I understand why you relate so much to CM Punk.
Because like he's straight edge and I'm straight edge. Although I don't claim to be straight edge because like it's a punk rock thing and I'm not really like punk rock, but like I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs. So I think that's one of the reasons why I like CM Punk. But not only that, but it's like the fact that he just like left his family, which is something a lot of people wouldn't do.
Yeah.
Right? Like he just kind of disowned them, and he says like he still loves them and whatnot, and he talks to them, I guess. But like his family is, what's her name? Ches was like his stepsister.
He has three
Yeah.
best friends, but he calls them their sister.
Yeah,
and they became that close.
right? And their family. So.
They went to
Which I thought was cool, and it's like you have to respect a guy that, you know, like he stands for something, and even if it's not like. Not if everybody agrees with it, but like he still sticks to it,
right.
Despite the fact that people
he's
think
a leader,
that he's
not
wrong.
a follower.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
and you have to respect him for that, and that's another reason why I like CM Punk. Next question. Well, that wasn't a question. That was more of a statement.
But... Right. I guess the next thing that would really come in that was more of a question was Luke Gallows. I know now Luke Gallows he's in with the Bullet Club and Raw, and we see him every now and again, but. I had no idea that he was a part of that so long ago.
Oh, yeah.
Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Luke Gallows and his partner...
Festus?
No.
Oh,
right now.
Joey Mercury? Oh, right now, Carl Anderson.
Didn't they come from ROH or New Japan?
Yeah, they came from New Japan, but New Japan had a working relationship with Ring of Honor, so they would also wrestle Ring of Honor.
Okay, so like Luke Gallows was on Raw, and then they kind of brought him down and then brought him back up.
No.
Okay.
Well, he was on SmackDown.
Okay.
Do you know what SmackDown is? I'm assuming you know what SmackDown is. It's like their second tier show, but back in the day, I'm sure you heard of this. Like the brand split is coming again. By the time this goes up, that might already have happened. But they're gonna split the shows up. They're gonna have Raw and SmackDown, and then 2 different rosters for each show. They used to do that back in the day. They had it for like 9 or 10 years, and Luke Gallows was a guy that was on SmackDown. So he was on a show. He was on one of the bigger shows, but he was on SmackDown when he first debuted. His name was Festus.
Okay.
And I think we talked about this where he kind of played like a mentally challenged character, and then when the bell would ring, he would go insane and fight, and then when the bell would ring again, he would zone out.
Turn it off. Yeah.
He then went down to developmental, which would have been either FCW in Florida or Ohio Valley Wrestling in Ohio, or Kentucky, I think was actually where it was at, which is really fucking weird. But and then they called him back up when CM Punk was doing the Straight Edge Society thing. And the idea for CM Punk was the Straight Edge Society was to cleanse people and to get them out of their drinking habits or drug addictions. And CM Punk tells us in the documentary that the idea was that when Luke Gallows was Festus, he was actually on drugs. There was no mental illness there, but then CM Punk saved him and cleansed him of that drug addiction, and then he was saved and everything.
Gotcha.
After that, he got released. He went to TNA, which I don't know if you know what TNA is, but it's another wrestling
heard
company.
of it, yeah.
It's nobody really watches it, so don't worry about it. He went to TNA for maybe 6 months or so, and then he went to New Japan, and then they signed him from New Japan. So it's something that doesn't really happen a lot, where somebody leaves the company, makes a bigger name for themselves outside of the company, and then comes back.
Okay.
Which is kind of what AJ Styles
That's
did
why I was
also.
confused because, like, I mean, obviously I haven't been around wrestling that much, but just in general, you leave a company and you get bigger after you left a company. It just doesn't really seem. So that's why I was curious what happened there. And
Yeah, AJ Styles kind of did something similar where he didn't go to WWE, but he was like TNA's poster boy. He was like TNA's John Cena. And when he left TNA, he talked to WWE, and they gave him like some ridiculously low offer, and he laughed in their face, and then went to Japan and made a huge name for himself.
Right.
And then came here, and now he's making a shit ton of money wrestling in WWE, a lot more than he would have right after he left TNA.
Right.
And so whatever. But that doesn't really have anything to do with CM Punk, but I like that story because I think that's really cool.
Okay, so CM Punk wins Money in the Bank for the first time.
Right.
And then what happens?
Let's see.
Not much, right? He kind of just has to hold it.
Yeah, correct. But I mean, like, that's kind of what everybody does. Kind of. I mean, like, it depends.
So he cashes it in, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, like,
and then he becomes the champion.
Just to point out that just winning the Money in the Bank is kind of a promotion, not a promotion, but like, the company has faith in you.
Right.
Because if you win, it's kind of like they're going to give you the title most likely.
Right.
There's only like a select few people that have lost after winning Money in the Bank. So like just them giving you the Money in the Bank is kind of like saying, hey, we believe in you. We think you're a star. And at some point you're going to be the champion. So,
and that's why I said.
So he does end up winning the title.
And this is why I asked you what happens, and I said not much. Because cashes it in, he does become the champion.
Right.
But after he's the champion, not much happens, right? I mean, just in general, that seemed weird. And then it happens again.
July 30th, 2008, he wins the World Heavyweight Championship for the first time.
Okay. Fun fact.
Okay, he loses it, right? He loses it without actually losing in a match the first time.
Oh, okay.
Which was strange because why would that I don't understand. I don't understand why they did that. I mean, they say that they needed it. It kind of seems to be like a consistent story in CM Punk's career where it's like, and whether it's true or not, it could have been something that he was doing backstage where maybe he was pissing off the wrong people or whatever. Maybe he was too bossy, whatever it might have been. He was a pain in the ass to deal with. It doesn't matter, but like it seemed to be a consistent thing where it was like Punk is here, and then well, let's bring him back down to here because somebody else is going to be up here, and maybe we'll use Punk later on because they take the title away from him. He gets kicked in the head backstage, and then they vacate the title, and they give it to the Shawn Michaels Chris Jericho feud, which was really good at the time, but to just to take it from CM Punk and just here you guys take it. CM Punk, you're going to be on the shelf for a little bit. We'll do something with you some other time, but that seems to be a pretty consistent thing.
Now, bouncing off of that, you said pissing off the wrong people, too bossy, etc., etc. One thing in the documentary. Now we'll just say this happens twice. He, wins Money in the Bank, gets the title. Nothing really becomes of him winning the title.
Right.
Yeah, he has a title, but it's just kind of he's just there.
Right.
He's not making a presence.
The title doesn't make him a bigger star or anything.
So that seemed odd, but bouncing off of what you said about pissing the people off or too bossy backstage or whatever, in the documentary, everyone they grabbed for the documentary didn't have anything bad to say. It was the complete opposite. From what in the documentary, he was a hard worker, and obviously they're not going to grab someone to say bad stuff about someone on a documentary, but for someone to come from IWA all the way up to the Big Shot or the big shows, etc., you obviously do have to put in a lot of work, and you do have to know what you're doing. And for him to come from rags to riches, you would think that he couldn't have made it that far by being that type of person. Too bossy, loudmouth, trying to run, so that I would just something seemed off about all of that.
See, the thing is, you say that they bring in like people that were saying nice stuff, but like Triple H, for instance, was on the documentary. Like they interviewed him and he talked about him, and he says nothing but nice stuff about CM Punk the entire time. But if you want to listen to something that's really interesting, go back when CM Punk left in January 2014, I want to say. It was about a year before he did a podcast telling why he left, and he did it on Colt Cabana's podcast. It's like 2 hours long if you want to go back and listen to it. But he'll tell you stories about how like Triple H did not like him. Triple H hated him. Triple H would talk shit about him backstage, but then be nice to him to his face or whatnot. So it's like some of those people may have just been putting on an act and just saying what they needed to say in order to so people don't fucking hate them because they're corporate guys.
Right.
And the point of the documentary is to make CM Punk look good anyways, so why not say the good things about CM Punk? And basically he was a hard worker. But there's stories like why Triple H didn't like him was because he was kind of picky, or if he didn't like the way something was going, he would make it known and he would vocalize it to the people that he had to: Triple H, Vince McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, whoever it took. And I personally respect that, because if he's not happy with the direction that he's going, he's going to say something and try and change the direction to make himself a bigger star, because that's what he believes he is. And I respect that.
I mean, I respect that as well. And that's not just something you should do as a job. That's something you should do overall in your life.
Right.
If you don't like how something is going, you have to work to change it.
Right.
I mean, it goes for anything.
But then you have to look at it from the point of view of like Triple H or Vince McMahon, the guys in charge, going like, I'm in charge of this company. I've been in charge of this company for fucking ever. Like Vince McMahon, for instance, was a guy that, he bought the company from his father and then took it in a completely different direction, put all of his money down, could have lost all of his money at WrestleMania 1, and then turned it into $1 billion company. And now here's CM Punk, some guy with tattoos. It's, he's a bitch, and he's going to tell me what he's going to do. I don't think so. But so like, I kind of understand like both sides of the story, but we kind of got away from whatever your question was. What was your question? Something about...
Well, it was talking about how everyone seemed like they liked him, and he had such a good work ethic, and he truly did know what he was talking about, because he made himself out of nothing. So everything that he learned, I mean, it was from people from good authority. And so you would think that with that type of mindset and work ethic, that him having these shots and getting the title, but nothing really happening from that, is just ill-deserved. It shouldn't have happened to him.
Right. Well, it's like, even then, it's like, if you look at the amount of resistance that he had to overcome to even get to become World Heavyweight Champion or Intercontinental Champion or Tag Champion, to even be on Raw. Like, this was a guy that they signed. They didn't even really understand what to do with him, because he was one of the first guys that was signed out of the Indies in like a long time that they were going to do anything with, or, whatever.
Right. Like, Paul Heyman was pushing him. He saw that CM Punk could be a big star. Paul Heyman believed in him. People at, was it Raw or SmackDown at the time?
It was probably
first
both.
CM Punk. Okay, but I
think he went to SmackDown first, so it was probably SmackDown.
They didn't want anything to do with Punk. Punk had to hang out, not being even remotely as big as he should have been for a long time. At what?
OVW.
OVW. Okay, so he had to hang out there for a long time. Finally, once he got to SmackDown, it was almost the same thing as the titles. Yeah, you're here, but just go sit in the corner and do your
I
own
think
thing.
A lot of that has to do with the fact that he was one of those guys. He was a smaller guy. He wasn't exactly what they look for. They look for big fucking football players or MMA athletes or whatever it is. They look for the big, strong, tall guys. And CM Punk was one of those guys. He was a little bit smaller. He talks about how he gained a bunch of weight when he first signed with WWE, and he was basically fat. But, he was one of those first guys, him and Daniel Bryan, and we talked about this in the pre-show, that they kind of paved the way. And now you have guys like Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose and all of these former indie stars that they have kind of now got some sort of idea how to write stories for them, or how to push them, and how to showcase them, and it's because of CM Punk, and CM Punk going through all of that and pushing his way to the top, I think helped out a lot of these guys now, because if he couldn't do it and Daniel Bryan couldn't do it, then they wouldn't have the guys that they have now
Right.
that have an easier way of making their way to the top. Next question.
Okay.
I think we finished that one off pretty well.
Yeah. We're already at about like 20 minutes, so I guess I'll just. And this is my last question, anyways. Because this is towards the end of his career. If we're going chronologically, I mean it is the end of his career. His very last monologue, where John Cena was just laying there in the ring with, I believe, a table or a chair.
He had just been put through a table.
A table. Was just laying on top of John Cena. And then CM Punk just goes and sits down with the microphone. And he just starts going off. Speaking his mind.
Yep.
They did cut out him speaking at one point, which raises my question. Did they know that he was going to be saying all of the stuff they were going to be saying? And part of the reason why I'm saying, or which makes it more of a question from me, is stuff like that. It does raise questions. I mean, I obviously have a question about it, and him being so frustrated with his career and people telling him no all the time, even though he deserved yeses all around the board, really fueled what he was saying, and every word that he spoke meant so much more than if someone else would have said it. You know, he has had the most resistance in his career, from what I could tell so far, out of any wrestler. Granted, I don't know a lot, but he deserves so much more than what he got. And so when this obviously was, the documentary was in chronological order, so this was towards the end of the documentary. Me watching everything about him, and then him sitting down and saying this, the words they weren't just words at that point. They carried weight. Him talking about how many times he's been screwed over, the people that were on his side, the people that weren't on his side. And it just, like, if I was into wrestling back then and I heard him say that, like, my mind would have been blown, because, like, it was just so real. But was it actually real? I mean, it made great TV, and I'm not really into not into wrestling, as I'm not as invested in it because I just started watching it. But like, it was crazy.
Okay, are you done?
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry. Like,
great. Okay,
that's how much I enjoyed.
This is my favorite thing to talk about CM Punk. At the time, you know, we talked about how CM Punk had to constantly fight and claw and climb to get to the top, to where he was at. And after this, he leaves and comes back. Okay. We didn't watch the Money in the Bank match, but he wins the title. Oh no, we did watch it, didn't we? No, we didn't. No. I don't know. Whatever. I think we started to watch it and then we quit. But he does end up winning the title, and he leaves. And then, you know, he signs a contract. I think he talks about it in the the thing where he signs the contract like halfway through the show.
Yeah, so that way he could do it, and then he took it home with him. He literally walked out the front doors.
Yeah, because the show was in Chicago, and he lives in Chicago. So, but at that point, you know, he had been fighting and trying to get his way to the top, and he thought that he was a top guy, and he deserved to be the WWE champion. He's there every day, putting in the work, and at this time, The Rock had just come back. And The Rock has been gone forever, and he's a part-timer now, and he's going to wrestle at WrestleMania, and he was going to be in the main event at WrestleMania, and I believe The Miz had just been in the main event at WrestleMania, and The Miz isn't that great, but like, he's good, but he's not CM Punk great, which we would find out later on, obviously, or unless you knew it before, but and that really bothered CM Punk, and you know, he was constantly trying to fight with management to try and work with them to become what he knew that he could be. And he was leaving, and they knew that he was going to leave, and he told them, you know, when my contract is up, I'm done. I'm going, you know, back to the Indies. I'm going to fight in UFC. I'm going to do something else. I'm done with this place. Yeah. And so what they decided to do, and I believe he talks about this on the podcast with Colt Cabana, that night in Las Vegas, the writer came up to him, and he talks about how the writers would hand him a script, and he would just go, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want. And the writer was just like, you know, CM Punk was like, what do you got for me? And he's like, they want you to just go out there and just speak your mind. And so it was 100% real. It was exactly, maybe they gave him like, you know, something to hit, or maybe in his own mind he knew, because at one point he does say something like, I'm beating you, you know, June 9th at TLC. So, you know, he does kind of like promote the next pay-per-view, which might just be CM Punk's wrestling mind
Right.
doing what he needs to do. But from what I've heard and what CM Punk has said is that it was 100% real. They gave him the mic. They said, you have, whatever amount of time, 10-15 minutes to just speak your mind and say whatever you want. Just air out your grievances and you can say whatever you want. And so it was real. The thing about cutting him off, when he gets cut off, he starts to talk about Vince McMahon being a bully.
Okay.
And so I think that they might have cut it off for that reason, because they do have a Be a Star campaign where they go to schools and they talk to kids about not being bullies. So maybe they didn't want him to say something that would make Vince McMahon look bad. Or, because I remember watching this live and just like my mind just going, what the fuck just happened?
Because this, like, I'm imagining this is something that was almost unheard of.
Right, because he mentions
never...
he mentions Ring of Honor and New Japan, which is something that WWE never did. They were WWE. They didn't mention TNA, ROH, New Japan. They mentioned nobody ever on TV. And CM Punk comes out and he goes, I'm taking the title back to Ring of Honor. I'm going to New Japan. And then he says hi to Colt Cabana, which is something, it's so unheard of at that time. Now they kind of mention New Japan. In this video, they show footage from Ring of Honor and stuff like that. And they've since used Ring of Honor footage in their documentaries, which I think is awesome. But where was I going with this?
I was asking you the question. You're the one with the answers.
I know, but I forgot where I was going.
You were talking about how he got cut
off.
off.
Yeah. It might have just been the fact that like the show was, because the show usually runs till about 11:15.
He had to go home.
And
metaphorically and literally.
Well, yeah, but like I think that it might have just been like, oh hey, we're out of time. Let's cut this short because he can talk all damn day, and the USA Network needs to play the rest of their show. So it could have been one of those two things. I think it's more that CM Punk was about to say something that they maybe knew where he was going, and they didn't want that out. But the rest of it, yeah, it was 100% real from what I understand. He would go on to like give other promos that were kind of like maybe it's real, maybe it's fake. But this one, as far as I know, is 100% real. So a few things that I want to hit on. We did the Straight Edge Society. What was I going to do? He bailed Joey Mercury out. This is another reason. When I watched this, I had no clue that this was a thing. Joey Mercury was a guy that he became friends with in the business, and he respected him. And Joey Mercury had like a drug problem or a drinking problem, something like that.
It was drugs, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and he was going to lose his house. And CM Punk bought his house for him and told him don't worry about it. I thought that was one of the coolest things ever. And so how do you not respect CM Punk after that? That was another thing that really made me a fan of his. The next is like, this documentary was made kind of when CM Punk left after that monologue. Well, he won the title that Sunday at Money in the Bank. Re-signed his contract, but nobody knew that, right? We were all kind of watching and going, I don't know what's going to happen next. I believe he showed up at like a Comic-Con that WWE was at, like Triple H was at, and he came, he just showed up, walked through the door with like the title and, was just talking shit. They gave Rey Mysterio was the champion for a minute, and then I believe John Cena won it. But then CM Punk comes back on Raw, new song, new look, new T-shirt, all this stuff, and then now he's a huge star. Fast forward, he kind of during this time he wins the title, and he goes on this crazy long run where he's champion for like 428 days or something like that, which is just insane amount of time, and. But the entire time that he's champion, he's not main eventing any of these shows, or if he is, it's not like, it's not like a big pay-per-view. Right. And he should be main eventing these shows because he is the champion. He is the top star. He's the guy that is selling almost more merchandise than John Cena, who is like just sells so much goddamn merchandise. It's unfucking believable. And they just won't give him the main event slot. And they kind of give him to Triple H. Triple H beats him, which kind of slows down his progress. He has to face Kevin Nash for some reason, which is a guy that we'll get into sometime later. And they kind of do all these things that kind of slows progress down again, right? And it's just like, it's a consistent story with him where it's like...
people pumping the brakes on him.
Yeah, and it's just like, it doesn't make any sense because he could have been so much more. He could have been the absolute top guy. He could have been Stone Cold Steve Austin level, and they just wouldn't let it happen. They just kept on slowing him down. And it eventually got to him. He ended up getting sick. He had multiple concussions. We talked about it. He had a cyst on his back, which ended up being like a staph infection, and like he almost died from it. From his side of the story, anyways. Whatever WWE's side of the story is, I don't know. But So he ended up leaving right after the Royal Rumble in 2014. I believe his contract wasn't up for another couple of months, but they released him anyways. And all this stuff happened where he sued the company because he wasn't getting money for the merchandise that they were still selling and all this stuff. He signed with the UFC, and whether he comes back or not, I don't know. But I think it was important to note that he did end up eventually leaving the company for the reasons why he was going to leave in the first place and re-signed. But so whatever. I mean, the WWE kind of fucked CM Punk in my opinion, and I hope he comes back one day and they actually do it right. But who the fuck knows?
From what I can tell, he's definitely someone who deserves it to be done right.
And they actually just announced that he's going to be... Well, I don't think UFC announced, but I think his first fight's going to be the night before SummerSlam, which is interesting. So, guys, thank you for watching. Are you done? Any more questions? Anything else you want to say?
Nope, that's it. I'm Collin.
The next one... We're not fucking saying bye yet. We got to tell them what we're watching next. What's the next one we're watching? You texted me. Stone Cold? Triple H? Triple H?
Was it Triple H?
It
was Triple H, but I want to change my mind. We're going to do Stone Cold.
All right, we're going to do the Stone Cold documentary, whichever one's on there. I don't know. There's probably more than one, but whichever one's the good one. I don't know. Fuck it. We'll do a pre-show where we tell you guys all that stuff.
We'll tweet it out as well.
Oh, yeah. Make sure to follow us at Jobber_Nation.
At CollinPayne97.
That's Collin. Did you want to say your name again? Did you want to say bye?
No,
bye, guys.
Well, that's your job.
Oh, okay.
Bye.
Bye.